Hi everyone, and welcome to my overview for your digital footprint and your reputation as a teacher. And this caught my interest when I was looking at the topics because it was discussed sort of at length in my first year of part-time studies. And it sort of surprised me when it was first discussed that your online activity and even how you conducted yourself in the community, the sort of things you shared, and what could be found online about you would potentially make or break your ability to actually get a job as a teacher. Now, look, there's nothing sus online regarding myself, but I did start Facebook in 2008, which I was 18 years old. And I think um, now, as a 30-something-year-old, there's a lot of things that would have been traceable with my original Facebook account that, would have given students a lot of fodder to throw at me eventually, I guess. And as we know, even if your privacy settings are set right up, there seems to always be a way for this stuff to come out. The internet never forgets. So, um, putting all that information together, we'll look at the first slide. Your digital footprint and your reputation comprises of elements. And I think one of the first elements that comes into how your digital footprint is presented is your knowledge around how your digital footprint is being recorded. Are you aware of what websites are recording your information, and how is it being shared and how can it be linked back to you? So increasing our own knowledge around that and making sure that we're being diligent with our settings on our social media accounts and just point blank not going to questionable sites. The next is how others are presenting you online. If you've got friends who love to share questionable photos of you, now by questionable, I'm only talking about you standing at an event with a wine. That can lead to the comment of, oh, miss, you had a good time on the weekend, and derail the introduction to your class. This hasn't happened to me, but I've seen it happen to other teachers. Your knowledge of the standards to which you're being held, that's probably was the biggest shock I had starting out as a teacher, that you really are being held to, I guess, what some would describe as Christian standards, but it's expected that you will never go get drunk and get in a bar fight. Again, not something I was probably going to do, but it's, as a teacher, probably something you shouldn't be doing. And the last one, and the one that you have the most control over, is how you choose to present yourself online. So if you've got all your political views, all of your personal garbage, all of your family woes and maybe triumphs online for everyone to see, it's available to be judged. So I think we need to think about all those digital literacy lessons that we're teaching our kids and our students, and really apply them to ourselves, and also probably think about how they do actually apply to our children as well. But anyway, that's another rabbit hole and we're not going to go down to it. Now, when I actually went through the literature, everything was mostly agreeing that when I did my Google search online. And so I picked two government websites, but they're two reputable websites, on how to enhance your digital footprint. Now, one of them comes from the readings in the tutorial, and the other one is the My Futures website, which is, of course, the website that we use to teach kids or students how to get into the workforce. So I thought that was very applicable for us as graduate teachers, because we are students in our own manner going into the workforce. So actively try to build a positive footprint is probably just so important. The big question I think that we ask students when we're teaching about digital literacy, and we should ask ourselves, is does everybody need to know our personal views, and do they need to be written down? Because once it's written down and in an email or beyond the spoken word, once it's recorded, it is, well, can and will be used against you at a future time. The next is increase your privacy settings. So you should always have those set up, obviously, and that's basically the basis of what the research is saying. Set your privacy settings on everything that you have as high as you possibly can. The next that comes up consistently was consider your future and think before you post. Um, Back in the day when Facebook first started, thoughts and feelings were expressed. And I guess that probably still happens on things like Twitter. I think it could happen very frequently in, say, Snapchat, where you like get a funny video and you might say something back. The person can take a screenshot of that. So always thinking about before you post. Post positively wherever possible. It's usually not used against you. Check yourself. So Google yourself, see what comes up, see if you can be found, because that's what potential employers are going to do, and that is part of your digital footprint. Untag yourself. I started to do this with my old Facebook account, and I just ended up getting rid of it because I found after being on there, so I'd been on there over 10 years before I became a teacher, and there was nothing on there that was really, really bad, but it was just a lot of stuff. It was 10 years of stuff, and it was 10 years records, so it was just easier to delete the whole thing than try and untag. But if a photo goes up that you don't want going up, or you're tagged in a post you don't like, you can to be untagged, or you can untag yourself. And knowing how to do that within multiple sites, I think, is very important. Something we need to know as teachers for ourselves, but also for our students. You can unfriend and unfollow people you don't like or who present choices that express views that you don't like. That came up. Seems like an obvious one. Make positive choices. And remembering that you are making footprints online wherever you go. And again, can and will be used against you. Now, protecting the information you do choose to put online, did a bit of research into that too, because obviously as teachers, we are going to have some stuff online. It is impossible not to. Disable location services, so those things can't be tracked. These came from Cook 2018, and if you want to have a look at this article, I will put it in the reference section of this page. Log out of social media sites and emails. Don't just close the tab, because otherwise it continues to track online the things that you're going into, and it targets your ads. This comes into the AI, which is used in these sites, which can be helpful, but sometimes also not. Avoid using the single sign-on, because again, you're creating a deliberately linked trail. Change your smartphone settings so that you've obviously got your privacy on. You can change your settings on your phone so that they're not using this AI to send you ads, so they'll be less targeted, they collect less data. Limit the amount of information you give when you go to sites if you can. This is an interesting one for me, because I've obviously within this course just done a lot of work on finding online resources to use, and we're putting these kids online. But I'm having to sign up for all these things and all these passwords, and they say that you're only, don't use the password that you use for, say, your banking for your Facebook, because your Facebook's more likely to be hacked, and then they have all your details. So that came up in my head. So I actually have several different passwords that I use depending on how I've determined the security levels of the website. So we'll find out if I'm wrong or right about that. And do a digital checkup, which is obviously Googling yourself and just trying to find if there's any loopholes. Also, interestingly, when I bought a new computer, I used a antivirus, which has obviously been updated a lot now from the original antivirus, but the antivirus software will now do some digital checkups on your computer for you. So just thought that was a side note. I couldn't get out of this without talking about the Australian Professional Standards for Teachers. There is actually a code of ethics as well. So, I mean, we're talking to that. And within school policies, I remember reading this on my first placement. Within school policies for teachers, there is time limits on interactions with students outside. And this specifically addresses points that have been touched on in previous comments on this page about just small rural communities and how much interaction you have with students outside of class time to do with like families, and you might be related to them and that sort of thing. And yes, there is actually time limits on how long before a student may contact you in a certain way. So I think we've always got to be, well, I know we've always got to be aware of those when we are interacting with students. And the other one is that we need to meet 7.1, which is meet the professional ethics and responsibilities, which I've just talked to, and 7.2, which is comply with legislative, administrative, and organisational requirements. So that comes into your school's handbook. So that needs to be read, needs to be understood, and needs to be front of mind digitally as well as in person. Thank you. I hope you found this useful.